The purpose of this tutorial is to get you familiar with the fundamentals of the SAS language. In this tutorial, we will learn how to import data into SAS from a raw text file. A raw text file is just a name given to the original source of the data. In our case, the raw text file will be data that we enter into Microsoft Notepad on Microsoft Windows. We will then learn how to write SAS code to properly import and display the data from the Notepad file. Throughout the tutorial, I will be using SAS University Edition, which is currently free to download and use. Now here I have some data that I entered into Notepad. I have saved the file as patientdata.dat, and our goal is to import and properly display the data in SAS. In the first line, we have what is called our first complete observation. We have name, gender, age, and weight. So we have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 observations in this data set. Okay, so our first line of code is going to be data space patients. What this line of code does is it gives the data set a name. So the name is going to be called patients, and that name is exclusive to SAS. Earlier we had the Notepad file name patientdata.dat. This name here is exclusive to Notepad, and these two names do not have to match. Also, a very important thing to keep in mind is you have to end each complete line of code with a semicolon. If you forget the semicolon and you happen to run the code, you're going to get errors. Now what we need to do is tell SAS where to find the raw text file or the Notepad file patientdata.dat. So under server files and folders, under my folders, we have the file right here. And in my case, to find the exact location, I'm using SAS Studio University Edition. So I'm going to right click on the file, go down to properties, and the location is right here. So what we do is we type in the keyword in file, and we do single quotations, and we put in the location, and also you have to remember to end this complete line of code with a semicolon. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to tell SAS what the variables are and how to read the raw data. So looking back at the Notepad file, we have our complete first observation, and we have name, gender, age, and weight. That's 4 variables. So we need to write code that tells SAS that we have 4 variables, and we need to define whether those variables are numeric variables or character variables. Those are the 2 main types of data in SAS. Okay, so we're going to type in input space name followed by a $sign. What this $sign does is it tells SAS that as it starts reading the first data line right here, it's telling SAS to read it as character data type. Character data type just means that it's letters. So SAS is going to start reading the first however many columns we have. So as you can see the cursor here that's blinking, we have the first column, second column, third column, fourth, fifth, and so on. So it's just going to, by default, because we've said here with the $sign, it's going to read it as character data type, and it's going to assign these character data here, it's going to assign it the variable called name, and you'll see in the end how this all comes out. And then next we have gender, which is character data type, so we have to follow that by a $sign. Then we have age, which is numeric data type, so we don't follow that by a $sign. Then we have weight, again that's numeric data type, and we do not follow that with a $sign. And just like every other complete line of code, you have to end it with a semicolon. Okay, and now for our final line of code, we're going to write run followed by semicolon, We're going to finally run these 4 lines of code by clicking on this little icon. And we have what SAS outputs under output data. As you can see, we have the 4 variables, name, gender, age, and weight. And we have the 5 observations, just like we had in the raw text file here. Another thing I want to show you is the log file. This log file is going to show you how many observations and variables that you have. So here it says we have 5 observations, 4 variables. So this is useful to where if you're inputting data, you want to make sure that all the data got in correctly. Down here we just have some processing time, how long it took to process the code. Over here we have the min and max record length. Max record length was 23, and this may seem, you know, like sort of tedious and redundant, but it's actually very important to understand when you start using different ways to write code to import the data. So what the 23 means is that the longest observation is 23 columns long. So this observation, if we start the cursor here and we count, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 columns. And it's important to remember that it's how you save the file such that it's how you save the file as how SAS interprets it. If I were to continue adding spaces after the 8 like this, and I save the file, if I save the notepad file like that, and then I ran the code again, it would give me a different number down here as a maximum record length. Another thing worth mentioning is where it says 9 records were read from the in file. What is a record? Okay, if we look back at the file, we have what we see one complete observation. We can call that observation a record or also a data line. And the way SAS sees this is we start here with the cursor blinking, and a trick to do here is we use the right arrow key and we just scroll through the text here, and if we start from the beginning, this whole line, that's 1 record. So if we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 records, why is it showing in SAS that we have 9 records? That's because it's counting the blank space between each data line. So continuing with the right arrow trick, we have, well, I'll start at the beginning again. We have all that's the first record, and right there is the second record. Going further with the right arrow key, all here is the third record, and the 4th record right there in between that blank space. And then we have the 5th, 6th, all of this is the 7th, and 8th, and then we finally have the last record at Mary, which is all of that right there. So that's why this is here showing 9 records. It's, again, this seems like it's tedious and redundant, but it's very important to understand how SAS is reading this raw text file. One final note I want to mention in the log file is right here where it says work.patience. I'm not going to go too much into this in detail, but just for you to know now as a basic idea, in SAS we have what are called temporary data sets and permanent data sets. Here, because it says work, this is a temporary data set. Here where it says patience, that's the name of the data set that we named right here in the first line of code. And going back to the log file, this part, this is called the library reference. So to the left of the dot here, the library reference is work, which as mentioned is a temporary work library. And again, this is just the name of the dataset file. Now, one last and final thing I want to mention, which is very important, is the guidelines that you have to follow when you're importing raw data from a text file into SAS. The input style that we've just demonstrated is called list style or freestyle. Okay, so what are the guidelines? Looking back at the notepad file, as we mentioned earlier, there are two main types of data in SAS. There's character data type and there's numeric data type. So considering character data type first, the first major guideline is it cannot be more than 8 columns long. If we look at Julia, we see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 columns. If we go down here to Michelle, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. For some reason, Michelle, let's say there was an S at the end of her name, and we saved the notepad file, ran the code again, there would be a problem in the output. It would not look right. Another major thing for character data type is that it cannot have spaces. So let's say that you wanted to include the first letter of their last name, which is M, and you save the notepad file, run the code again, it's not going to give you the correct output. So those are two major guidelines you want to keep in mind for character data type. It cannot be any spaces, and the length of the columns cannot be greater than 8. Now you may be wondering, well, there's spaces between Julia and the F here, but that's not a problem because we wrote here in the code that we said, okay, read this part in the first observation and assign this name here, Julia, to the name variable. And then what SAS does is it disregards these spaces because it knows that this letter F belongs to the gender variable. So SAS has a very intricate way of reading each data line. Now the guidelines for numeric data are the following. Here we have two numeric variables. So we have age and weight. And the first guideline is that they have to be separated by one or more spaces. So let's say that I had weight right next to age, and if I was to save this notepad file, run the code again, you would have a problem in the output. Another second guideline for numeric data type is that you have to make sure missing values are replaced with a period. So say for instance Julia didn't for some reason have a weight and it wasn't recorded, and you can't have a space, you have to put a period in place of that. So those are the two major guidelines for numeric data. If you have any questions or comments, you can post in the comment section below, and please don't forget to subscribe for future videos. Thank you for watching.